Welcome back, listeners. This episode is a little different than what we usually do here. In my English class, we've been reading the book Into the Wild by Jan Crocker. So, I've been given the task of making a mini podcast episode talking about whether or not Chris McCandless was brave or reckless for, well, going into the wild. Remember, this is simply my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with me. Chris McCandless was reckless as opposed to brave. He was just a stubborn, hard-headed jackass, just the same as every other man on the planet. There is evidence and points I agree with that can be found in chapters 7 through 9 of Into the Wild. A prime example of his recklessness, which is also linked to his hard-headedness, can be found in chapter 7. Quote, "Once Alex made up his mind about something, there was no changing it," Westerberg laments. "I even offered to buy him a plane ticket to Fairbanks, which would have let him work an extra 10 days and still get to Alaska by the end of April. But he said, 'No, I want to hitch north. Flying would be cheating. It would wreck the whole trip.'" The mere fact that McCandless would rather hitchhike than fly to Alaska without even having to pay for it shows how reckless he truly is. He is so stubborn and set in his beliefs that he has to accomplish things alone that he would rather willingly put himself in the position of potential danger for the sake of himself and his quote-unquote accomplishments. That can be a good thing in certain situations. However, this is not one of those situations. Continuing on, in Chapter 8 we are given some of the opinions of those spectating who didn't know McCandless personally, though Nick Jans made excellent points. He wrote, quote, "Over the past 15 years, I've run into several McCandless types out in the country. Same story. Idealistic, energetic young guys who overestimated themselves, underestimated the country, and ended up in trouble. McCandless was hardly unique. There's quite a few of these guys hanging around the state, so much alike that they're almost a collective cliche. The only difference is that McCandless ended up dead, with the story of his dumbassedness splashed across the media. His ignorance, which could have been cured by a USGS quadrant and a Boy Scout manual, is what killed him." End quote. Although the statement he makes directly after that last sentence is cold-hearted, I must say that I disagree with that. Everything else he stated helps to support the idea that McCandless was, in fact, a reckless idiot. Specifically where Jans mentions that McCandless overestimated himself and underestimated the country. In this instance, it would be the wilderness of Alaska. In Alaska, it truly is survival of the fittest, and McCandless was not properly prepared for it. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, and that's what the majority of the issue was. He didn't bother to try and educate himself on what it would be like. He just set his mind on it, essentially going in blind. And when has that ever worked out for anyone? It could be argued that McCandless was being brave for what he did. He did face the unknown, which takes courage, and credit is given where credit is due. Bravery and stupidity go hand in hand. However, there is a clear difference between the two. Despite both requiring risk, one is calculated and the other is not. Bravery is calculated, and nothing that McCandless did was calculated. He didn't act out of bravery, he acted out of stupidity and recklessness, which, at the end of the day, led to his demise. With everything presented, the only takeaway is that going on an adventure can become reckless if someone ignores risks, refuses help, or isn't properly prepared for what they're getting themselves into. So be prepared for anything and everything, and make sure to always research what you might be getting yourself into. Thank you for listening to RH Debates. Feel free to express your opinions in the comments below.